Hi, boys and girls. We are starting the 21st book and last book of the My Weird School series, Miss Crup Cracks Me Up. Chapter 1. Field trips are boring. My name is AJ and I hate school. It was Monday, the worst day of the week. We were on our way to lunch in the vomitorium at elementary school. My friend, Ryan Dole, was the line leader, and I was the door holder. All the guys were talking about the big football game that was on TV over the weekend. All the kids were gabbing about all the girls were gabbing about some girly stuff like what color shoes they have. Enough chit chat, said our teacher, Mrs. Daisy. Mrs. Daisy used to be Miss Daisy, but she went off and got married to our reading specialist, Mr. Mackey, so now we call her Mrs. Daisy. I just got some great news, she told us. Next week, our class is going on a field trip. Yay, said all the girls. Boo, said all the boys. Ugh, remember the last time we went on a field trip? It was totally lame. Do you know why? We went on a field trip to a field. How lame is that? We had to look at disgusting bugs. Our science teacher, Mr. Docker, even ate one of them. But then, Mr. Docker is off his rocker. We should go on a field trip to a museum, amusement park, or a video arcade. That would be cool. I love field trips, said this annoying girl with curly brown hair named Andrea, who loves everything teachers love. Me too, said her crybaby friend Emily. Where are we going? We're going to visit a natural history museum, Mrs. Daisy said, all excited. What? A natural history museum? Natural stuff is boring. History is boring. And nothing more boring than a museum. So a natural history museum is sure to be the most boring place in the history of the world. Now, you want to know why I hate school. Chapter 2. Weird people. I grabbed a lunch table in the vomitorium with the guys. Andrea and some of the girls sat at the table next to us. Michael, who never ties his shoes, put straws in his nostrils and said he was a walrus. Neil, who we call Neil the nude kid, even though he wears clothes, put tater tots over his eyeballs. Ryan balanced his lunchbox on his head. Ugh, broccoli, I said. I opened my lunch bag. I'm not eating food that looks like a tree? I'll eat it, said Ryan. Who will eat anything? Ryan even eats stuff that isn't food. He's weird. I don't want to go to a natural history museum, Michael said. What a snore, I told the guys. I bet they're going to tell us the history of rocks. Yeah, rocks are cool, said Neil, the nude kid. I have a rock collection at home. You collect rocks? I asked Neil. Why collect something that just lies on the ground? You might as well collect air. My uncle collects air, Ryan said. Whenever he goes on a trip, he brings an empty bottle along. He's got bottles of air from all over the world. Your uncle is weird, I told Ryan. One time, he couldn't find a bathroom, and he had to use one of his bottles, Ryan added. Ugh, gross, see? I told you he was weird, Ryan said. That's when little Miss I Know Everything opened her big mouth at the next table. Natural history isn't about rocks and air, dumbhead, she said. It's about all the objects in nature, like plants, animals. So's your face, I told Andrea. Anytime anybody says something mean to you, you should say, so's your face. That's the first rule of being a kid. I wish some plant and animals would fall on Andrea's head. Like a 400-pound piece of broccoli and a hippopotamus. Chapter 3. The Gynosaurus. Bingle boo, said the bus driver, Mrs. Cornwall. Limp-a-doodle. Bingle boo, we all said as we piled onto the bus. Miss Cornwall invented her own secret language. So instead of just saying hello and sit down, she says bingle boo and limp-a-doodle. Miss Cornwall is not normal. I had to lug my sleeping bag with me because we're going to be spending the whole night in the Natural History Museum. Just what I was always wanted to do, sleep next to boring dead stuff. At least I had my Batman sleeping bag because Batman is cool. There were grown-ups on the bus with us too. Mrs. Daisy, Mr. Mackey, Mr. Docker were all there. Ryan's mom, Mrs. Dole, came along as a chaperone. That's a fancy word that means a grown-up who hangs around with kids to make sure we don't have any fun. Are we there yet? I asked Miss Cornwall as soon as we started driving. No, AJ, she said. I kept asking Miss Cornwall every 5 minutes if we were there yet. And any time you're in a car or a bus, always ask if you're there yet, even if you know perfectly well you're not there yet. That's the first rule of being a kid. It took 1,100,000 hours to get to the Natural History Museum. Pinky pull for Boone, announced Mrs. Cornwall when the bus finally stopped. That means everybody get off the bus in Miss Cornwall's secret language. As soon as we walked into the museum, we heard an announcement. The museum will be closing in 5 minutes. Yay! I shouted, we can go home. That means everybody else has to go home, Arlo, said Andrea. I knew that, I lied. I hated when Andrea called me by my real name. In the entrance of the museum, I looked up and saw the most amazing thing in the history of the world. It was a huge dinosaur skeleton that had just about filled the whole room. Dinosaurs are cool. Whoa, everybody said, which is Mom upside down. It's a Gynosaurus, said Andrea. He is one of the biggest meat-eating dinosaurs in the world, even bigger than T-Rex. That's right, Andrea, said Mr. Docker. How did you know that? I read about him in my encyclopedia, said Andrea, all proud of herself. He weighs 8 tons. He should have to go to Weight Watchers, I said. My mom lost 20 pounds that way. Where do you think they got a Gynosaurus, said Ryan. They probably went to rent a dinosaur, Michael said. You can rent anything. Next to the dinosaur was a big bear, and that was standing up on its hind legs like it was about to attack. It was cool and scary. Ryan's mom and the other grown-ups told us to spread out our sleeping bags on the floor underneath the dinosaur. Then they went off to do boring grown-up stuff like drink coffee and talk about the weather. What's up with that? Grown-ups are always drinking coffee and talking about the weather. I tasted coffee once and I thought I was going to throw up, but they didn't drink coffee and talk about the weather. I don't know what grown-ups would do all day. They're weird. Speaking of grown-ups, I wrote a poem about my dad, and it goes like this. My dad has hair growing out of his nose. If he didn't cut it, it could reach his toes. He also has hair coming out of his ears. I tried to tell him, but he couldn't hear. Why do men grow hair in such strange places? I thought it was weird when it grew out of their faces. I unrolled my sleeping bag right next to Ryan's and then turned around and saw the coolest thing in the history of the world. I am not going to tell you what it is. Okay, I'll tell you, but you have to read the next chapter. Nanny, nanny, boo-boo, on you. Bye, boys and girls.